out of respect for their innate goodness. And once I started doing that in prisons, you started not seeing the person's crime, but seeing their goodness. I realized there's no such thing in this world as a criminal. There's only people who have done crimes. There's a great difference between criminals and people who have done crimes. A criminal is branded for life, or many lives. A person who's done crimes is a person first. Their acts are secondary. In the same way, there's no such thing as a terrorist. There's people who do terrorist acts. What that means is if somebody has done some awful act, they're more than that crime, they're more than that act. There's something else in there, there's a Buddha nature, some goodness in there, which you can focus on that. There's a way forward in rehabilitation and growth. When I did that to these prisoners, or rather these people who had done a criminal act, when I recognized something beautiful inside of them, then they also recognized that. When I saw it, and I respected them, then they saw that someone actually respected them. Why? And they saw it themselves. And from that place of respect, seeing their goodness, then rehabilitation started. Some of these prisoners became really good guys. And because of that, look, this is one thing which happened, a very beautiful story. Did I tell the story of the prisoners who went to the school last time? This actually made me cry the last time I told this story. Might do it again. It's a beautiful story. I was teaching in this meditation in this prison, and on one day I turned up a little bit earlier. One of the prisoners, whose name was Nick, was waiting for me. He grabbed me by the arm without telling me why, and he pulled me towards the schoolroom in the prison to look at the board. And on the board were all these greeting cards, handmade greeting cards done by children in a local primary school. He told me why these cards were there and why he couldn't wait for me to see them. A local primary school wanted to help the children in their school with the danger of drugs. I'm not sure if this is the case in Singapore, but in countries like Australia, in Europe and United States, our children are exposed to drugs even in primary school. High school, certainly. And the parents, or rather the teachers, the headmaster, the principal, wanted to try and do something before it was too late. So the principal contacted the education department. Can we have something for our kids to tell them about the danger of drugs? And after a while, the education got back to them and said, there's this professor in this university, there's this lecturer there, who you can invite to come and give a talk. And the principal, bless her, said, no. These are people who have studied it but don't know the guts of what happens in drugs. They had this great inspiration to get a couple of experts, real experts. They invited a couple of prisoners who are in jail for crimes of dealing drugs. Nick was one of them, one of my meditation students. I praise that principal and the governor of that jail for having the guts to do this. I think it was kept secret at the time because some press would get in there and say, you are exposing our children to these criminals, to the scum. They're going to corrupt our kids. That's not what happened. Nick and his friends spent a whole day at this primary school telling class after class what happens, what really it is like when you take that first puff of the marijuana joint, what it's like when you inject that heroin in your arm, and what happens next, and next, and when to feed your habit, you go selling that stuff to others, when you see some of your friends die of overdoses, when you see them steal to feed their habit, when you see people die at a young age, you see your girlfriends turn to prostitution, you see lives ruined. When they talk from the heart like that, I can imagine just what that would have done to these kids. Everybody responds to truth, to real honesty. I knew how those kids reacted because I could see that on the cards. Dear Nick, thanks so much. I'll never take drugs. Signed, Rabina. Dear Nick, thanks for doing this. Please visit us when you next come out. Signed, Jessica. Dear Dick, hope it's not so bad for you in the prison. Hope your sentence finishes soon. Signed, Charles. Just card after card of the kids saying what it meant to them to have two prisoners who knew from their own bitter experience what it was like. Not some expert, from a university, but someone who'd been there, felt it, and had been hurt. And as he was saying this, Nick was weeping, as he was pointing to card after card after card. These little kids who'd opened their heart out to a man who'd made some big mistakes in his life, and now had done something to heal the harm which he had made. And I did see Nick a couple of years later. I was at the airport in Perth. Someone put their hand on my left shoulder. I turned around. It was Nick in a very good suit. He's obviously doing very well. And his first words, "I'm still meditating, Brahm, I'm still meditating," he said. That was a classic, beautiful win-win situation when drugs wasn't their problem, the people in jail. It was our problem. And two people who committed drug crimes, children who hadn't faced that test yet, came together. The children, I was sure, would have been equipped better than any other children in the whole of Australia to resist. And those prisoners realized there was more to them than their crime. They'd actually done something beautiful and good. And that's why they got on with their life once they were released and became probably not just good citizens, but probably excellent citizens. That's how we solve problems. Innovative, courageous, in a way which faces a problem square on and solves them. When we realize it's not the prisoner's problem, it's not the kid's problem, it's our problem. We work together.
Ajahn Brahm, it seems that when you're emotionally charged, it's a lot harder to see things objectively because you're emotionally tangled with the situation or with the person. And you seem to have always clarity and calmness which allows you to see things as they are. Perhaps is that to do with the meditation practice? And if so, I mean, what would you recommend to lay people in practicing meditation?
Yeah, it's just, and when you say no emotions there, I was almost crying when I was telling the story. I do get emotional. But my emotions are these inspiration emotions, loving kindness emotions. When I see something really beautiful, I allow myself just to feel them in the heart. I don't resist them at all. Because that inspiration, the beauty of the heart, when even a monk feels like crying for something so beautiful and so wonderful, it uplifts me. So with emotions, we all have those emotions. Don't be some sort of robot, someone who never feels. That's not being a human being. It's those negative emotions, that's what you mean. And those negative emotions, they always come because we just think of ourselves or them. We don't look in the right place. So this is relationships, and this is what I've been talking about all evening. It's not them. It's not sort of, the murderers, the criminals. It's not our enemies. It's not that person in the office. Don't look there. Don't look about me. Look about what's between us. It's the us problem. And that's with politics. We have to work together. A bit of competition is great, because in that argument, in that robust debate, we get further. That's why I told Angie, I love Angie to ask me these questions and really probe me. You're being too soft. Because in that robustness of debate, challenging, you get much deeper into truth. But there's also that sort of cooperation as well, which is so important in life, which is looking at what we have together, what's in our interest. And it's in our interest, to solve the problem of drugs. And let's get the drug addicts involved in this. It's our interest to stop terrorism. Let's get the terrorists involved in this. Stop putting them away in jails and forgetting about them. They are part of the problem. We are part of the problem. They're all part of the solution. So it's just looking at innovative ways. And I think it's maybe because, as a Buddhist monk, it's almost like the meditation allows you to push aside all those narrow constraints of thinking. Because when you're very peaceful and still, you can see things in different strange ways. But it's not just meditation. I was saying this earlier to someone, it's also being playful in your life. And I learned this as a scientist at Cambridge. Because they said, if you're going to be a research scientist, get your equipment, play with it first of all. Play around for fun. Because in that play, not only are you familiarizing yourself with the equipment, but sometimes in that play, you're discovering new angles on science, almost by mistake. That playfulness is opening yourself up to what's happening, joyfully researching, investigating what's there in front of you. That playfulness is important. And anyone who's visited my monastery can see my monks are very playful. And I've encouraged that deliberately. You see, I'm sometimes playful as well, even though I'm a 53-year-old man. Never lose your playfulness, your ability just to enjoy the moment and see the ridiculous nature in the moment. In that playfulness and in that calmness, that's where you find new solutions to the problems. And that's where you get clarity. Sometimes it'd be great in our parliaments if we tell more jokes. I mean that simply because in that laughter there's togetherness, because we all laugh together. And secondly, there's that short-circuiting of our old ways of thinking to see things anew. There's a lot of creativity comes in play. And I think that's something as adults we get far too serious, even on the bench. Sometimes it'd be great if the judges would actually wear their wigs the wrong way around or something. I don't know what it is, but something to take away the gravitas, at times, not always obviously, the gravitas, to be able to see things in a different way. And that way I think we can get creativity. And that create creative solutions to problems. They're just wonderful. For example, I wanted to say this today because this came up last week. I said I was going to mention this point. A couple of weeks ago, in the newspapers, you may have all read it, that the Marines in Guantanamo Bay were accused of flushing a book of the Quran down the toilet. So someone asked me, what do you think about that, Ajahn Brahmavamso? What would you have done if someone had flushed like a holy book of Buddhism, say the Dhammapada, down the toilet? And being quite creative without any pause, I said, I'll probably call a plumber. What do you think? It's an obvious answer, isn't it? I'm a very practical monk, but I went further than that. I say, look, you can flush as many Buddhist books as you like down the toilet, but I will never let you flush Buddhism down the toilet. I will never allow you to flush peace, forgiveness, harmony, my respect for you down the toilet. Because isn't that what the books are all about? The books are the messengers. You can flush the messenger down the toilet as many times as you like. The Buddha statue is a messenger. It's there for a purpose. It's teaching us something. You can blow that Buddha statue up, but I'll not allow you to blow the message of the Buddha up. So just as what happened at Bamiyan, you can blow those Buddha statues up, but I'll never allow you to blow up my peacefulness, my tolerance, my friendliness, my brotherhood and sisterhood to you. So that's actually, we preserve what those books, or what those icons, what those temples are all about. Please excuse me, the owners of this temple, you can blow this temple up, but please don't allow Buddhism or peace and truth, kindness, forgiveness to be blown up. That's more important. That's what this temple is there for. It's actually to spread the teachings of the Buddha, of kindness and truth and friendliness and forgiveness. So if we allow those important things to be damaged, then they truly are flushing Buddhism down the toilet. And no one can do that, only you can do that. So that's my answer. That's like a bit of creative thinking, just by being still and peaceful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Ajahn, sometimes it is, although we know we're supposed to forgive,
Yeah.
but what it's hard is to actually forgive.
Okay. If it's hard to forgive, you have to learn how to forgive. So like anything else in life, it comes from practice, training. You get encouragement from forgiveness experts like myself, all for free. Because recently, just because there's a monk who was leaving to go off to the United States, there's usually a tradition in Buddhist monasticism, when somebody leaves, they ask forgiveness of their teacher. And so straight away I said, I forgive you for anything you may have said, done, or thought, intentional or unintentional, for the 3 time zones. Now I added that because that's not original Buddhism. This is an Ajahn Brahma innovation. So I said, I forgive you for everything which was said, done, or thought in the past, in the present, or in the future. So you don't have to bother me with all this again. You're already forgiven. And I give that to you as well. I give you all forgiveness in the 3 time zones, whatever you do, say and think, intentional or unintentional, which harms or hurts me, in the past, the present, or in the future, until the end of this eon, I forgive you. So you can do whatever you want, you're already forgiven. Now do that to your husband. Say, look, darling, I don't care what you do, say, or think, intentional or unintentional, I give you pre-forgiveness. Understand you're already forgiven.
What if he's cheated on you?
Let's forgive you. It says past, I forgive you. Because you can flush sort of the, what is it? You know, you can flush that little business down the toilet, but you're not going to flush your love down the toilet. The higher ideals of a marriage, which is going to say to that little being, which you partner, look, I'm going to stay with you for life. Don't care what you do. I'm going to be your supporter, your friend, your mate. If you make a mistake, you already have my forgiveness, because my love is greater than that. If you could do that, and if you really meant it, that partner would not dare do anything which harmed or hurt someone like you. And you all know that came from my own father, who told me, son, the door of my heart will always be open to you, no matter what you ever do in your life, son. I'll always be your father, I will always love you, no matter what you do. When he told me that, some of my mates at school were getting involved in drugs. One of the reasons I never got involved in drugs in that time, in a high school in West London in the late 60s, was I didn't want to harm my dad. Anyone who trusted me that much, I can't hurt someone like that. No way. When I went to jail to teach, there was this one occasion where several visitors to this top security jail in Western Australia had been attacked, very badly beaten, and even raped. And just because you were a man didn't matter, they would rape you as well. Some of the prisoners had such long sentences it didn't matter. They're going to die in jail. What's the point? You can do whatever you like. You can't punish, there's no further punishment. So, because of the danger of visitors being attacked, there was a new security system had just been installed in this prison. I was given a pen. And they said, this is not really a pen for writing, this is a security alarm. They pointed out, you see all these what look like smoke detectors on the ceiling. They're not smoke detectors. These are alarms. If you get attacked, take the pen, press the top, aim it at one of these detectors. The alarm will go off. We'll know exactly where you are. We'll come and protect you. And they said, put it in your jacket pocket. And straight away I said, oh, come on. You see me, I haven't got a jacket, I haven't even got a pocket. And they said, I'll put it whatever you want. So I just and they said, but don't tell the prisoners, it's a secret. We don't want them to know. So I went in there just holding it. And as soon as I came into my meditation class, the first words the prisoners said were, oh, so you've got one of those security devices as well. They all knew exactly what it was. But then one of the prisoners, he became a really good friend. He's a great guy. He was one of the leaders. For those of you who know that story about the levitation, he was actually the one who asked the question, can you levitate by meditating? But this particular prisoner came up to me and he said, Brahm, do you really think that you can even get your finger to the button of that pen before we jumped you? And now these are tough guys. And I looked at him, I said, no, probably not. He said, correct. We could get to you and rape you before you even thought about that. But then he looked at me. He said, but if any of those guys tried it, I get to them first. We like you. You're safe. And that's why in this jail, which was very violent, I felt so safe at all times. I mean that. My security system was just kindness. I'm not just saying that just as trying to be religious. If you are kind to other people, really are selfless, and just really are gentle, other people protect you. They can't see you harmed. They just won't do it. Even sometimes I've been in situations in Australia about to be punched. Other monks have been in situations in the Bronx, in New York, where they had these hoodlums come up to them. They can't be harmed or hurt. Just some of these monks are just too soft and kind, and you just can't do it. So sometimes that kindness, that softness, that is what protects you. So that's why you don't really need to learn such self-defense. If you have really heaps and heaps of loving kindness, and really do have compassion, and do have this acceptance of another person. So this comes back to what I said in the beginning here. If your partner, you give them that degree of loving kindness and metta, you'll find that their times when they will cheat on you will get less and less if they happen at all. If you don't trust them, then they will cheat. If you trust them, really trust them, and forgive them, the cheating will get less and less and less, if it happens at all. Why do they want to cheat? Why is it they prefer someone else than you? What's wrong with you? It must be that somewhere inside there they're missing something. And what they're missing is this beautiful connection between us, which says, at least there's one person in my life who I can feel so relaxed with, so at home with. I know whatever I do, they'll always love me and care for me. That unconditional loving kindness is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It's incredible how it can heal marriages. So if your partner has cheated on you, this would be my advice, whether you've got the guts to follow it or not. Say, darling, I forgive you. If you cheat again, I will forgive you again. Don't know how many times you cheat on me, I'll always forgive you. Try it. Just take that step into what is completely irrational, but inspirational. Try it.
That's going to take a lot of courage.
Yeah. Courage is the most important part of any relationship. You know, when you meet another person, you get married. Somebody told me this, I haven't checked it out, but the word marriage comes from a Latin word which also means to gamble. Because when you commit yourself to somebody else, you think you know the person you're marrying, but you never do. You'll be always learning who that person is for the rest of your life. And it's a gamble. But it's a gamble if it pays off, which is wonderful. And it's a gamble, it's a trial, which you can learn so much from. And if you have some good advice and good encouragement, it's amazing what you can do. You can be inspirational. You can work together. You can solve those problems.
Ajahn Brahm, once I heard
Go on.
that in your absence there was a monk who visited your monastery and stayed there. And this visiting monk was not keeping to the rules of the Vinaya code. And as a result, whoever was in charge then packed his bag and threw him out of the monastery. Is that something that you would have done? Because it's like us packing our, whoever's bag and throw it out and said, all right, you no longer live here.
Well, usually that in a monastery, I don't have the final say. It is a democracy, and I get outvoted. And I love that when I do get outvoted, because like a family, there's nobody who is the head of a family. A family is a group. We work together, and so it has to be a joint decision. So sometimes I disagree with what the other monks decide. But if the monks decide that, I'll always work with that, and I'll do that. It happened, anyone who visits my monastery sees our main hall. The story behind that main hall is as follows. At that particular time, I was number 2 monk, but I was the main builder of the monastery. I learned how to lay bricks and put roofs on. And I worked very, very hard labouring. Really hands-on work in all aspects of building in that monastery. But when it came time for our main hall in our monastery, the abbot wanted to be built one way. I wanted to be built another way. I thought the abbot's plan was completely impractical, expensive, it wouldn't work, and it was absolutely stupid. So we had an argument. I had a bad argument with the abbot of this monastery about 3 or 4 days. I'm not perfect, I had to learn, like everybody else. But after 3 or 4 days of having this terrible argument with another monk, I literally came to my senses. So what am I doing this for? It does not matter what a monastery looks like. What's important in a monastery is the people. People are more important than buildings. It's much better to have a monastery where people are living in harmony, which is completely a mess, than having this beautiful monastery of chandeliers and gold and very expensive and lots of marbles where the monks or the nuns are arguing every day. So I went up to that monk, the abbot, and I asked forgiveness. And when I really meant it, I said, look, I'm sorry that I've had an argument with you. And I asked for a favour. He was actually quite touched. And I said, can I ask for 2 favours? First of all, can we build it your way? That's favour number 1. And number 2, can you let me be the builder? And my name is on the building licence of that main hall. I built it his way. I still think it was a stupid way of building, but I may be wrong. But the point was that I really wanted to do something to overcome my ideas and my views. And I did that, and it took about 2 years to build that place, and I put so much energy and effort into building that. And I wanted to build it the very, very best, as strong, as beautiful as I possibly could, his way. Now I felt so proud of that I did something like that. So if you want harmony in your marriage, ask, if you're a wife, ask your husband, what does he want? You say, I'll do it your way. And I'll go even further. I'll put more extra effort, double effort in doing it your way. If it's the other way around. So the husband's saying to the wife, which way do you want it to be done? I'll do it your way. Sometimes that takes courage and guts to do that. It's such a beautiful way of living a life. So what happens now, because I've told that story, and sometimes the arguments we have at our monastery these days is do it your way. No, you do it your way. No, I insist, your way. No. We did it my way last time, your way this time. We have this playing around in our monastery. People are just giving all the time. They're giving up, and it's a crazy monastery to live in, but it's very playful.
Ajahn Brahm, someone had wanted me to ask this question because in Singapore there has been quite a few cases of maid abuse, and having a maid at home with us, it's a very common thing, and some people end up changing maids like 7 times in 4 years sort of thing, and maids get abused at home. So, I mean, do you think that this is a case of people just not respecting the maid, or is just expecting too much, and how should people treat the maids?
It's actually, it's a relationship problem. You have a maid, you have the family. They're part of the household, so there's a relationship there. They're not part of the family as such. They're a maid, they're employed. They're not the same as the children or the wife, but they're part of things, and so you've got a goal here to cooperate. You've got to work together. You've got to go and earn enough money to pay her. She's got to do her jobs and duties. And so it's that cooperation thing which we have to have. And so we have to actually learn, if there is a problem, it's not the maid's problem. It's our problem. Look, what's the problem here? You're not cleaning up properly. So you find out what the problem is, and it's not her problem. If it's her problem, you've got to change. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And sometimes we miss out what the problem truly is. She may be just too tired. It may be too much work for her. Or maybe you need to sort of adjust the work. It's part of the Buddha's teachings. In Sigalawada Sutta, for those of you who've read that, which is if you have employees, you have to give them work according to their abilities, what they can actually do. So if you have a maid, find out what she's capable of doing, how she's capable of doing it, and give her work according to her abilities. Obviously that she has her duties to try and work as hard as she possibly can. And there must be something wrong with the employers if they can never find a good maid, because many of the maids, obviously they want to have a stable job. They want actually to be in the same family instead of chopping and changing all around. Obviously there'll be a few maids who are lazy and don't know how to work properly, but they shouldn't really last all that long in the system. But the majority of maids, I'm sure, really want to do the best thing by the employer and giving a good chance and giving respect and giving help. They will do the best. I've got a piece of paper on my wall at my hut in Australia. There was a company in the United Kingdom who won an award for best business practice, who got that award because they stopped overtime. They banned it. And once they banned overtime, productivity soared through the roof. Their profits went up as well. And this is why they won the prize. And they asked the managing director, what's going on there? And he said, look, before we asked for so much overtime from our employees. They're getting so stressed out. They weren't having a proper family life. And they were taking sick leave. They weren't working all that hard. Because we were asking so much of them, they didn't really feel like they wanted to contribute to the company. They never worked harder. They were always surly to the customers because they were upset. And they had a high staff turnover. As soon as they banned it, you just could not do it. After your 40-hour week, you went home. And even if you worked without pay, no, you go home. They were sent home. As a result of that, they realized the bosses actually cared for the welfare of the ordinary workers. So the workers actually wanted to work in this place. When they realized how the CEOs actually cared for them, they worked harder and they were happier, which meant their customers felt this was a happy company. People were being kind. It was a good company. So they got more business. Staff turnover just almost vanished. Nobody wanted to leave. Productivity went up, sales went up, it became an incredibly successful company. And just from a simple thing like banning overtime, but it wasn't just banning overtime, it was just showing that people cared. So if you have a maid problem, have you showed her you care? If you really care about her welfare, and maybe there's a time she needs to go off and see her sick mother in the Philippines or whatever, buy her the ticket and send her off with some money, and she'll come back and work harder for you. Maybe that's one of the problems. We're exploiting the relationship rather than putting in this relationship some care, some kindness, some compassion. So instead of what I can get out of this person, we're in it together. It's a household. You need a maid. So it's an us problem. It's not a her problem, not a me problem. It's an us problem again.
To reverse that, Ajahn Brahm, what if you have a boss from hell? Or for some people, a mother-in-law from hell?
If you have a mother-in-law from hell again, it certainly is an us problem. So if you have a mother-in-law problem, again, it's a problem which does need to be solved. And if it's at all possible, if it's a mother-in-law problem, that's a bit more difficult simply because by the time they're mother-in-law, they're so old anyway, it's very hard to change. Sometimes you just have to wait for a while until they... But anyhow, again, those problems, you can see where they're coming from because mother-in-laws are still too possessive of their children, still my son rather than like our family. So one of the best things is to drag your mother-in-law over to a talk at the Buddhist Lodge or leave her some of the tapes or the talks. Because sometimes these teachings, they inspire people. And this was not a mother-in-law problem, this was a husband problem in Perth. Because this, I don't know if she was a Singaporean girl or a Malaysian girl, she was married to an Australian man. And she liked to go to the temple to listen to the Dhamma, but her husband would never go. And every time she tried to give him a book or a tape, he would just, that's stupid stuff. He was like a down-to-earth Australian man. So she came to see me, and I said, look, your approach is all wrong. You have to use, with husbands, just a little bit of psychology. It's not that hard. Tell your husbands, keep your hands off my books. So he read the book, and now he comes every week. It's obvious when you can see what to do. So if you've got a mother-in-law problem, just keep some of these books around and tell her, you keep your hands off these books, okay? Because of course, well, you can't tell me that. So they read the books and maybe they might understand something. So, same as a boss from hell problem. Sometimes the people who are, the boss from hell are they're usually afraid, maybe of their position. They're trying so hard to advance their own careers. If you can actually tell them, look, boss from hell, we are a team. If you're going to come from hell, I'm going to have to come from hell too. It's very infectious, this hell business. So isn't it much better for everybody if we work together? Teamwork, cooperation. And it actually works. Bosses from hell, they usually stress out so much themselves. They usually die of coronaries or they don't last very long. So maybe, I shouldn't be saying this, maybe get them really upset so the commentary comes earlier, but perhaps that's not a good thing for a monk to say. But no, I mean, a lot of times they've got their own little problems in life and they want things to be done. So you say that we've all got the same goal in our office, to actually get this project done. But look, if you want this project done, sort of encouragement is much more powerful than force and shouting at me. Because if we work out of fear, which is a lot of time the boss from hell installs fear, then fear doesn't work all that well as a motivator. All it teaches you to do is actually to work when the boss is watching, and when he's not watching, not to work. That was actually just like in the Singapore schools. You had the cane in the school that I grew up in. All I learned from the fear of the cane was not to get caught. I never learned what was right and wrong. I just learned how to be more devious, so the teacher never saw me when I was misbehaving. So fear taught me to be more devious, not to be good. But some other people encouraged me why you should be good, why you should not be a boss from hell, why you should be sort of a little bit more understanding and motivating, not through fear, but through the common good, the common goal. Because if the company folds up, then I lose my job too. If the project goes ahead, you get your promotion, I get my promotion, we all win. So if you can locate that common goal, that common purpose, then it's a common working together. Maybe that's a few suggestions.
Thank you for that, Ajahn Brahm. I think I've grilled you enough for 2 hours.
I was just getting into it.
Is there anyone from the floor who would like
yes.
to ask a question that perhaps I didn't have a chance to cover? Anyone at all?
Yes, we've
yes,
got a question
Susan.
from Susan. Great. You can always rely on a question from Susan. Thank you. What will we do without Susan?
Thank you.
And Susan always really asks really great questions. That's true.
Wait,
Just,
it works now. Thank you. I must live up to my name. What pressure is this? Anyway, thank you, Ajahn Brahm, for yet another enlightening talk. I have, okay, make it fast. I have one quick jokes to share.
Joke?
Very fast. Joke, yes.
Okay,
Do you
great.
like that?
So speak loudly because jokes are important.
Yeah, okay. Okay, this joke is about a husband and wife. So the wife was complaining, saying, I was a fool when I married you. So the husband looked at her, he said, yeah, I was so much in love that I didn't notice that. Okay, that aside, I got two questions.
That's a good joke. Quick while you're ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought it's worth sharing. Thank you for giving the time and the floor. Okay, now I forget the question. Okay, I recall already. Okay, my first question itself is, just now it says that, just like the title of your great book, opening your heart. No matter what you do, your Father will open the heart to you. So I'm saying that this statement itself is redundant for people who are kind-hearted, who are good, because they will not take advantage. But if you meet unscrupulous people, then this is not going to work, because you'll make yourself very vulnerable, no matter what they do, and at their mercy. Can you comment?
Okay, you do leave yourself very vulnerable when you actually open your heart to somebody else. But anyone who's got married knows that any relationship is actually a gift of vulnerability to the other person. Life makes you very vulnerable, and to feel makes you vulnerable. And vulnerability is part of life. And those people who try to be invulnerable, who try and be like an island, who try and put their heart in a concrete bunker, they will never feel pain, but they'll never feel happiness either. So sometimes that the path of letting go of attachments, the Buddhist path, is actually to let go into insecurity. As a monk, I got very vulnerable. Even I don't know literally where my next meal is coming from, who will feed me. when I went to Australia, I was very vulnerable, literally wearing girls' clothes, a skirt, in Australia. I was very vulnerable, just giving up my career and all my money to be a monk, because I had no money left at all. Even now I'm very vulnerable because I have no superannuation, no pension. It's wonderful to be vulnerable. Because when you really have some trust in goodness, which is actually what religious life should really be. It should be actually learning how just to be vulnerable. And actually some people will take advantage of you. But I'd rather have that and have some people abusing me, taking advantage of me, than the other way around. I'd rather feel a few hits, a few punches, than actually just always be running away from people.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question is, regarding whether be it family, domestic disputes or that of office politics, I find that sometimes when there's a quarrel or when there's some disagreement, some people unwittingly, they like to take sides without having an idea what the quarrel is about. So do you have comments, and how do you tell these people to hands off diplomatically?
Ah, no, it's good fun taking sides in the quarrel. But sometimes don't take the quarrels too seriously. It's a quarrel, it's just a little quarrel. Because sometimes, just for with that previous abbot of my monastery, just sometimes for fun, he would say something absolutely ridiculous, and I'd take the opposite side, just for a little bit of an argument. It's just almost like a game. But because we were friends, we would know, even though we'd be quite forceful with our arguments, our friendship was more important. And I recall at the time when I was a student, you go to the pub in England with your friends, because that's the meeting place where you would go. And sometimes you'd have these fierce arguments at each other on political issues or other issues, and you'd be shouting at each other. But we'd always remember, that was my friend there, because he could understand I could shout at him, and it was just getting excited, that's all. And in the end, they'd say, okay, enough now. We'd sort of, okay, my turn to pay for the next drink. And we'd always actually finish with friendship. So sometimes if there is an argument, have that argument, but always make sure that we finish off in friendship. That's the most important. What happens in the middle is not so important. We start in friendship, we have the argument, we always finish off in friendship. But when people actually take sides, sometimes that's okay, because actually you can listen to what they're saying, and actually maybe they can contribute to the solution. Because if maybe taking sides, it's because it is their problem as well, and they want to contribute. But the best side to take is the middle side. It's the old joke of what is the sweetest side of an apple? What's the sweetest side of an apple? The inside.
Oh, the inside.
So as the inside is the sweetest part of things. So what's in between us?
Okay.
Does that sort of answer the question, or not really? No, I'd say it if you think it.
A little, but I find that sometimes it depends on the other party, because some are just in for fun, so they just join up without understanding what is it all about.
That's right, yes. And have you ever been one of those?
What do you think?
Yeah, of course you have.
Ajahn.
Well, it's true. Why do we do that? It's because we always like to interfere. And we think that we can actually solve the problem. That we have the solution. We know what's right for everybody else. So a little bit of humility is always very, very good. And to understand that sometimes we don't know. And so sometimes it's best actually to not join the argument, but actually to find a space in the middle. Be the umpire, be the mediators. There's many people who want to join the football side on either end. But there's only one umpire or one referee. And actually we need more referees. So you be the referee. The one who actually delights in harmony. Who actually hears what that person's saying, hears what the other side is saying, and see if you can find some sort of space in between where they can all meet. So don't take sides, take the inside. In other words, be the mediator. That's the best side to take. The sweetest side of an apple is the inside.
Thank you, Ajahn Brahm.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to... Yeah, come on. You can use this mic as well.
Good evening, Ajahn.
Evening.
Okay, so problem can be solved if both parties are willing to come together to find a solution. What if one party refuses to change? And another question is, I find it very difficult to cultivate patience towards my enemy. So, is there any other ways to cultivate patience? Thank you.
Okay, first of all, sometimes in an argument, that's one of the sides won't change. Is that side your side? If it is, then you change. So the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them. Because sometimes, which is most important? Is it always the other person has to change? Because we always say, that other person, they won't change, they won't change, they won't change. And they come up to me and say, because they're the other party, say, the other party won't change, they won't change, they won't change. And I can see something there that obviously that if they won't change, you change. Like when that argument I had with that senior monk in my monastery. He wouldn't change, he wanted the hall to be built his way. And I wouldn't change, I wanted to be built my way. And so the only solution to that problem was, I will change. So if the other person won't change, then you change. You be the first one. And I'll guarantee you something. If you're the first person who change, you will be the winner. Certainly, spiritually, karmically, you will be the peacemaker. Because you understand the argument's not getting anywhere, the problem is just ruining our relationship, the company, the family can't move forward, so I will change. If you show that degree of humility, sometimes it embarrasses the other person. They say, oh, well, hang on a minute, maybe you were right in a few things as well. But you make that first move to change. And what the other thing was about, it's hard to forgive your enemy. Okay, it is because you have to see something in your enemy which is beautiful, which is kind. It was a weird thing for me when I saw some of my enemies when I was a young man, and I found out other people liked them. So how can you like someone like that? Now think of your worst enemy, the one who's really been cruel to you, very mean to you, has cheated you, maybe robbed you of much money. I mean, they probably have someone who loves them dearly. It's crazy, isn't it? How can actually, say, for example, Osama bin Laden, responsible for killing so many people. He has sons who love him dearly. How can they do that? You find every enemy, every terrible person in this world has other people who see something which you just cannot see in them. So your job with your enemy is actually to try and see them as one of their friends sees them. If you can do that, then the problem is 90% solved. It's on its way to solution. If you can't be patient with them, it means you want them to change. But it's not really you want them to change. You have to change the way you see them. Don't want them to change. Just what's between you and them. Your attitude, your relation, the way you see them. Get that to change first. Make sense?
Is there anyone else who would like to bring
Yes,
up a
it's
please?
Two questions. Yeah, great. It's warming up. It's getting hot.
Ajahn Brahm,
Yeah.
you mentioned let go,
Yeah.
let it go just now. Could you enlighten us what actually you mean by letting go? Right, thank you.
Okay. Somebody reminded me, that's actually Richard Lim reminded us of this at lunchtime. It's an old story which I said a long time ago. This is one of Ajahn Chah's stories. How heavy is this bottle of water? It's actually quite light to start off with. If I keep holding it like this, so after about 5 or 10 minutes, it will start to feel heavy. If I keep holding this like this for half an hour, I start to probably ache. If If I'm still holding it like this for 2 or 3 hours, I'll be in great pain and a very stupid monk. When it starts to get heavy, what should I do? Put it down, yeah. It's easy. I don't have to throw it away. I'm not being irresponsible. I just put it down for a few seconds. And when I pick it up again, actually it worked again, it feels lighter. This is an experiment you can do at home if you like. Don't ever say that Buddhism is not scientific. Get a glass of water, hold it for 2 or 3 minutes until it gets heavy, put it down for maybe 1 minute, pick it up again, you'll find it feels much lighter. Now, of course, you can understand what I mean by this. This is your problems, responsibilities, worries, duties, whatever it is. The reason why people have too much stress in our world is not because what they have to do is too much work. It doesn't matter how heavy this bottle is, that's not the point. It's because we don't know how to put it down from time to time when it feels heavy. So I carry a huge burden as spiritual director of the, patron of the Buddhist Fellowship. I'm the abbot of a big monastery, 3 monasteries in Perth, spiritual director of the Buddhist Society of West Australia, spiritual director of the Buddhist Society of South Australia, spiritual advisor of whatever it is, of Buddhist Society of Victoria, spiritual director of Chittabawana Hermitage in New South Wales, spiritual patron of Bodhikusama Hermitage, spiritual patron of the Dhamma Kobok Foundation, and I just got myself another role, Santi Monastery as well, and I just told you about this Australia Sangha Association.
President.
Chairman.
Oh,
Chairmonk of the Australia Sangha Association. Look, all this stuff which I'm supposed to do, so I really work hard. When I carry this burden, so when it gets too much, I put it down and have a meditation, relax. This is how you do a lot of work, how you take on lots of responsibility. When it gets too much in your office, take 5 minutes, time out, and rest, relax. When you go home at night, if you've got lots of work to do, rest and have dinner with your family first. Because we find if you rest first of all, when you pick up the burden afterwards, you're fresh, you're relaxed, you're clear, you are efficient. The problem with people who don't succeed in business and life is not they have to do too much, but they do it in a very inefficient way. When they're really tired, they keep pushing, which means they make lots of mistakes, they're not clear, they don't produce very much when they're tired. So the best thing to do when you're tired, rest, for goodness sake. Put it down for a few minutes, have a good rest, enjoy a meal with your family, have a game of golf or relax with some music or whatever it is, meditate, then pick up your burden afterwards. You're ready to do it. And your mind will enjoy it more. Because it enjoys it more, you can actually do much more. So that's what letting go is all about. Putting down your burden from time to time.
Yes, please.
Hello. I just want to have this question because I have a friend, very interesting. He said something to me. He said that, I forgive my husband too long. I forgive him so many times that I suffer so much. Yeah. So in the end, they actually divorced and she become more happy. So, the things I see in life is that there's always between about forgiving and also, like what you say, how do you strike a balance in life?
Okay, you're saying that that friend of yours forgave her husband. Obviously, she didn't forgive him. She just said, I forgive you, but she never really. That husband of mine, he did this, he did that. So she carried it around with him. And that's probably one of the reasons why the relationship never lasted. It wasn't real forgiveness. It wasn't real love. So it's incredible. If you do really forgive, and I mean really forgiving, it's very, very powerful. If you've done something, there's a good case of that when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, run by Desmond Tutu. And many of you have read some of the transcripts of what happened there. The apartheid regime in South Africa was responsible for some horrendous crimes. And there were so many of them that Nelson Mandela, one of the wisest men alive today decided that retribution was not going to help their country. And but they couldn't just ignore all the crimes. There had to be some sort of closure from people whose husbands had been killed, whose wives had been raped, and people who had been tortured. They had to do something. They couldn't just say, okay, leave it all alone, let's forget about it and move on. So they had this very innovative mechanism called the Truth and Reconciliation Council, which other countries have imitated, where they asked any perpetrators of crimes, murders or whatever, to come forward, and if they actually recounted in this forum honestly, with contrition, exactly what they've done, they would get amnesty. So some of these people were going up, some of the secret police officers, the white police officers, the soldiers, and saying the crimes they'd done against the black Africans. On one of these wonderful occasions, which when I read it really sort of moved me very, very much, was where I think one of the secret police officers, an Afrikaans, white man, just said just how he had tortured and eventually killed this black African who was his wife was in there listening to him all the time, in tears at what had happened to her husband and how he'd been mistreated and tortured so cruelly and eventually killed. And he recounted that trembling in front of her. At the end of his testimony, before he could truly break down, she ran up to him and gave this incredible hug and said, "I forgive you." And that was so moving because of the amount she had to forgive. Her husband, just for no real crime, no real reason, had been treated in the most demeaning, cruel, painful manner. And she could still find it in her heart, that sort of that leap of spiritual truth, to go up to that man, the torturer and murderer of her husband, and give him a hug and a sincere kiss. I forgive. That's moving. That can be done. And if you do something like that, it is a classic win-win situation. The woman gets closure, and that man who did that crime gets the start of his healing process. So if it's real forgiveness, it's always a positive outcome. The trouble is, a lot of times people think, I'm a Buddhist, I'm supposed to forgive. I'm a member of the Buddhist fellowship. Well, imagine I'm not supposed to forgive. I don't want to forgive, but I have to forgive. Okay, I forgive you. And of course, that never works because it's not real forgiveness. The real forgiveness is an act, a leap of courage, a leap of the heart, which says, you have hurt me. You've been unfaithful. Maybe you never know how much pain that is and how difficult that is. But I really forgive you.
Okay, but one interesting she told me was that you say, I forgive him, but I will not live with him.
Not live with him, yeah.
And I don't know, one of the things I will find is that, is it better that you don't really, it's true that society don't encourage divorce, but isn't it really better because now the husband's more happy, the wife's more, the ex-wife is more happy.
Yeah, it's like when you lose your job or you resign from your job, and the next Monday morning you're much more happy because you don't have to go to work that morning. But when the bills start coming in, then you're not happy at all. So sometimes when they get divorced, it's just like the end of a problem, but then there's more problems going to come next. There's no real solution. It's the old Band-Aid solution. So there's a big problem in all societies now that the divorce rate is going up. And that's all societies, all governments realize that is a huge social problem. You ask the kids. A long time ago, a kid asked me, he said, look, I need a mother and a father, about 5 years old. I said, why? Oh, when my mother scolds me, I've got another parent to run to. That's what they said to me. And kids do need two parents. And why is there just so many divorces going on in the world? And again, I don't think people aren't trying hard enough. Sure, I agree with you, there are some cases where divorce is the only option. It really just is incompatible. There's a big mistake made in the coming together, those two people. But I think there's too many divorces. I'm not saying divorce is evil and it should never be done. You should stick together no matter what. But I think we could try harder to accommodate ourselves to other people. Because you can divorce your partner, but you can't divorce from other people in this world. This is actually one of the great things of our world. The religions are coming together, the nations are coming together, we're going to each other's countries. We can't divorce from our neighbors anymore.
What is a good indication of you have tried enough or that you have not tried enough?
When you're dead, you know you've tried enough.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think we should probably give Ajahn Brahm some time to rest tonight because there's going to be an early flight to Bangkok in the morning. So I think on behalf of everyone here, the Buddhist Fellowship and the Buddhist Lodge, I'd like to thank Ajahn Brahm for that very insightful dialogue to give us a lot of inspiration. So perhaps we'll do it the Singapore way. Let's give him a round of applause.